Hello and welcome back. So in the last video, we took a look at an overview of parsing, just a whole bunch of slides and a little bit of technical babble. In this video, we're going to get our hands dirty. We're going to get much more specific. We're going to begin focusing on the Lexer, and over the next couple of videos, we're going to begin building one by hand. So Nelson, in this video here, give us an idea of what you've got lined up.
All right, so in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the responsibilities of the Lexer just quickly. Then we're going to get in, we're going to write a few stub classes to show you how the Lexer API will work. Then we're going to write some tests against those stub classes. Those tests are going to be used to track our progress as we implement the Lexer in the next video.
Okay, so in the next video, we're going to begin Lexer implementation, correct?
Yep.
Awesome.
Okay, so like I said before, a Lexer's goal is to take text that looks like this, well, at least our Lexer's goal, text that looks like this, and turn it into a token stream that looks like this. That's really its only goal. It's not going to do any analysis other than direct character matching. So let me go ahead and fire up Visual Studio. And I'm going to start off with a solution. And I'm going to stick it somewhere. Okay. So the first project I'm going to go ahead and add is just going to be the CGS by hand compiler. Delete out class 1. And the next project I'm going to add is going to be the CGS by hand.compiler.tests. And this test project I'm going to bring in via NuGet and unit. Eventually I clicked on the wrong tab somehow. And unit. Really? There we go. I'm going to go ahead and install this guy. Then I'm going to install Fluent Assertions. And we're done with that. Next thing, I'm going to make that bold go away because it irritates me. So I'm going to go into set my startup projects by my solution, say multiple startup projects, hit OK.
Well, let's see if we can talk just a little bit faster. I think you're going a little too slow for our viewers out there.
I can do faster if you want me to.
No, that's quite okay. That was sarcasm dripping off what I had to say.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to start off with creating our Lexer base class and our CGS Lexer class, and they're just going to be stubs. So I'm going to start off with abstract namespace. I'm going to put in a Lexer class. And this Lexer class is just going to be an abstract class that gives us some basic functionality for writing additional Lexers as we see fit. And like I said, it's going to be abstract once resharper initializes. It's going to go ahead and have a constructor that takes in a string as input. Then we're going to have a protected integer called pointer and a protected character called character. Finally, we're going to have a few different methods. The first one's going to be abstract, public abstract token, which is a class that has not been created yet, called a next token. And that is going to be it for now, actually. The only public method that we really have on this class, the rest is up to whoever derives from it. So I guess the next logical step would be to go ahead and implement our token class. We're going to go ahead and implement this guy fully because he's fairly simple. He's going to have a token type, an input, a pointer to the input of the entire Lexer, a start and an end. The start and the end denote where the value of this token starts and ends relative to the input string. I'm going to go ahead and turn these guys all into properties. It's just basic property stuff. Actually, input I'm going to leave as a field, just because nobody really needs to see that. Okay, and then finally I'm going to add a public string text property that's going to return the input.substring starting at start and ending at end minus start plus 1. So that will allow us to easily access the value whenever we need it, but we're not creating a bunch of unnecessary objects while we're lexing things. Next, I'm going to go ahead and create the token type. Token type is going to be an enum, not token enum, token type. So the goal of token type is to sort of uniquely identify every token within our system. I'm going to go ahead and write them all out here. There's only a few of them. The first one is going to be end of stream. This token will be emitted when we reach the end of the input. We're going to have an identifier, a number, a string, the words px for pixels, a colon, a semicolon, an open curly brace, a closed curly brace, a dot, a hash, a greater than sign, a plus sign, a comma, a percent, an O parenthesis, and a close parenthesis. So these are all the token types that our Lexer is going to support. So now our implementation should be complete, and so is our Lexer base class. And I'm going to go ahead and import this with a using statement up top. The next thing I'm going to do is build our CGS Lexer stub, which isn't going to do a whole lot publicly because it doesn't really need to. The only thing it needs to do is override the getNextToken method and take an input. So I'm going to have it inherit our Lexer. I'm going to generate our constructor, which is just going to take the string input and pass it on to the Lexer's input parameter. And I'm going to go ahead and implement nextToken. Right now, I'm just going to return out null. Okay, so that's our stub. These are going to be filled in the next video. But for now, because we do have a stub, we can go ahead and actually write some unit tests against these classes that will show you kind of how the API works and what to expect, and will give us a sort of acceptance criteria as we start building the implementation. So I'm going to start with a class called Lexer tests inside of our test project. And we're going to write a few basic test methods. So the first one is going to be public void Lexer given string with identifier returns ident token. Tokens. And we're going to start with Lexer equals new CGS Lexer. Of course, this isn't a project that hasn't been referenced yet, so I can use resharper to go ahead and reference CGS by hand.compiler. Then I'm going to pass in some input string, and I'm going to say ident1, ident2, tab over a few times, or not tab because my tab key doesn't work. Why doesn't my tab key work? I don't know. There we go. Tab over a few times, add some more white spaces, add an ident3, just throw in a new line for good measure, add an ident4. And then, because in CSS, identifiers can start with dashes, I want to go ahead and include underscores. I'm going to go ahead and just write out some gibberish. So our Lexer should be able to identify each one of these tokens individually. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 identifier tokens in this stream. Now what we could do is we could say Lexer next token should or next token dot type should be and then pass in a token type of ident. But we're going to write a nice little helper method that's going to help us write these tests a little bit more effectively. And that test method is going to be called match. Match is going to take an Lexer of any type, it doesn't really matter, called Lexer, a token type, which is our expected type, and a string expected text with the default value of null. So first we're going to say var token equals Lexer.nextToken. Then we're going to say token.type should be expected type, expected type, expected type. And then we're going to say if a expected text was provided, then go ahead and say token.text should be expected text. Then finally, we're going to go ahead and just write some match statements. So we're going to match our Lexer with an expected type of token type.ident with an expected text of ident 1. And then we're going to do ident 2, ident 3, ident 4, and so just copy and paste all that stuff in, and we have our first test. So if this test passes, that means we are identifying identifiers correctly with our Lexer. But obviously, it's not the only thing that our Lexer can do. I'm going to go ahead and write just a few more basic test methods for different cases. So we're going to say Lexer given string with numbers returns number tokens. And it's going to follow pretty much the same format. It's going to be Lexer equals new CGS Lexer, pass in some numbers like that, and tab over a little bit to add some nice white space. That should be ignored. And then that and that. Just random numbers that are meaningless but should be identified properly by our Lexer. So then we're going to say match Lexer with the token identifier of number and the number of whatever that number is. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers, so I'm going to copy and paste this 4 times. And just bring in each one of these things that should be parsed by our Lexer properly.
Okay.
The next thing is I'm going to mix things up a little bit. I'm going to do Lexer given string with string returns string tokens. It's going to follow the same format again. Basically, we're just identifying the primary types of value or data that our Lexer should be able to distinguish between. So we're going to start with a string of hello world, do a string of hey there, and a new line and another string. Then we're going to say match Lexer against a string, which is going to be token type dot string, and then we're going to pass in the text of hello world. And our Lexer is not going to return the quotes, just because I don't want to deal with that when I'm running my parser. So that is the expected output given strings. And finally, we're going to write one more test that's going to kind of bring everything together. We're going to say Lexer given CSS returns proper tokens. So we're going to say Lexer equals new CGS Lexer. We're going to pass in some more complex input. So we're going to say dot stuff font size 12 pt, and then ID selector padding 5 pixels. And we're going to make sure that the Lexer correctly parses or lexes this. So we're going to match the Lexer against, first of all, a dot. We're not going to give it an expected string because that's kind of stupid. Then it's going to match an ident of stuff. Then it's going to match and O curly. And then we're going to hit page down and scroll the code off the screen. We scroll back up and copy and paste a few times because I'm getting sick of that. Then we're going to expect another identifier, which is going to be font size. We're going to expect a colon. We're going to expect a number of 12. We're going to expect a PT, which is something that I did forget to add to our token type enumeration. So using the power of ReSharper, I'm going to go ahead and add that in. So you see at the bottom. And then just because I'm slightly OCD, I'm going to move this up to next to our PX suffix. So everybody make sure that you caught that I added PT as a token type. So then I'm going to say if it's PT, and then we're going to say semi. Then we're going to say stuff like O or C curly. Then we're going to say hash. Then we're going to say ident of ID selector. Then we're going to say O curly. Copy and paste this a few more times again. And then we're going to say ident of padding, followed by colon, followed by number, followed by PX, followed by semi, followed by a close curly, followed by an end of string. So this is our most comprehensive test that you see. And given that this successfully works, I would say that our Lexer is in good condition. We'll be knocking out each one of these tests one by one as we add more capabilities. Then once we add some symbols, we'll get to this guy. And then at the end of that, we will have an awesome Lexer that can recognize strings like this with ease.
Okay.
So just for good measure, I'm going to go ahead and run all these tests and make sure they all fail.
Because if they pass, that's just going to be shocking.
Yeah. So now we see that it's good. Everything fails with a null reference exception because I'm returning null as my token. So yeah, those are our tests.
Fantastic. So we'll go ahead and bring this video to a close, and in the next video, we'll get some implementation in place. Thanks a lot, everyone.